Okay, thank you very much. First of all, our delegation from Indonesia consists of the 30 people. So this every year we visiting the CPhI. For this occasion, I would like to introduce Indonesia. First of all, regarding the demographic area, Indonesia located in the Southeast Asia region as one of the members of Association of Southeast Asian Nations, which is consists of the 10 countries. From pharmaceuticals industry, Indonesia, for the time being, having a share around 33 to 34% of the total pharma industry in Southeast Asia, which is the total population in Indonesia. It is around 42 to 40% of the total ASEAN population. That means that Indonesia is having the very potential economic situation compared with the other countries in which the middle class economic income around 25% of the total population. That means it is more than Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore and Thailand combined at one, compared with around 25% of total population in Indonesia. It is 250 million. With regard to the Indonesian pharmaceutical business, especially for the industry, we already finalizing the roadmap of pharma industries, which is the roadmap for the pharma business, for the pharma industry until 2025. And then what is the important point in this area? We have four, we call that is the basic policy toward the Indonesian self-sufficiency in the pharma industries. For the time being, all pharma industries, the technology still within the technical formulation. And then we expect starting for next year, we start producing the API, mostly related with the biosimilar. And what it is the technology we get, it is we are in cooperation with several pharma industry in several countries. The aim of this policy, of course, to evaluate all the local resources towards the government policy regarding the acceleration of the pharma development business in South Asia to enable us to start with the self-sufficiency and then export to at least to the Asian countries. That is very strategic issues. And on this strategic roadmap for the pharma industries, the President has already issued the presidential instruction regarding the pharma industries toward the 2025. Consists of four basic elements. First of all, it is developing the basic knowledge for the production of vaccines, which is now we have one company is exporting to around 123 countries. And then the second is a biological product that is also related with the biosimilars. The third, it is we developing natural resources. And the fourth, we are starting to explore the possibility of producing API on the basis of the chemical substance. Of course, that is very much related with the local resources. With regard to this area, for the time being, Indonesia has already started with national health insurance since 2014. The government aimed that 2019, Indonesia will reach universal health coverage. That means all the Indonesian population will be covered with the national health insurance. That is, on the one hand, it is the volume of the pharma industry is increasing tremendously, but on the other hand, the value it is increasing modestly, and especially the government control the price regarding the medicine consumed for the national health insurance. That is the current situation. Thank you.
I want to talk about API. As you know, that as a fact that 90%, 95% of raw material using in Indonesia still imported raw material. So we are really depending on imported raw material. So we are trying to find a way how to solve it. First, that you know that why that we are in a group came to Indonesia, to this CPhI Barcelona. You know that with a group of 30 people from many companies, that we try to find the good sources of raw material. It's not only price, but also quality. Quality is become very important, because you know in Indonesia that although as you know that we have Indonesian insurance coverage, but we also try to give our people a good quality of product, good quality of medicine. That's why that we try to find a good raw material during the CPhI. And we also try to find a way how we also produce the raw material or API in Indonesia. Now in the process that we try to find what product, what raw material should be produced in Indonesia. First, we try to find that the raw material is used a lot in Indonesia. And also, we also try to find the technology, transfer technology that we can accept if we produce it in Indonesia. And also, quality-wise, that we also want to have good quality of the raw material itself. If we import, if we export this product, not only for Indonesian market, because if we really depend on Indonesian market, it's really very, very small. It's not quite economic scale. Is not really made the price. Our price will not competitive. That's why that we try to find the raw material which using a lot in Indonesia. But one thing that the important thing that we try also to find a good partner. So if in not Indonesia, maybe as you know that in the world that 80% of API market is belong to China. But in Indonesia also same like that. We are really depending on the China market and India raw material, China raw material. But now that we try also to find a good raw material producing by ourselves. This is also our target. And as you know that, as I mentioned to you before, that Indonesia is still depending on raw material, imported raw material. But if we can find a good sources of raw material with the competitive price and also good quality, I think that this is also a solution for our country, because as I said to you that we are still depending on imported raw material. And also that our PMMC, Pharma Material Management Club, we also have a program beside attending a big exhibition like CPhI in Barcelona. We also have in Indonesia, CPhI Indonesia, CPhI Southeast Asia. It will be next year in March. So during that period that we also invite our friend, not only from India, China, and other country, to come to our country to see the factory, to see the pharmaceutical industry in Indonesia, how we develop the product. So I think that It's also a good way to make that our country, our pharmaceutical industry, Indonesia also meet the high quality of standard, also knowing in international market. And I think that last but not least that you know that Indonesia now, according to Pak Jatun, Mr. Jatun, that we have a roadmap till 2025, that this is really a good way for us, a good guidance for us. It's not only for the finished product, but also for the raw material. Because during that period that we are sure that we need a lot of raw material, but we also want to participate to make that our industry using raw material not only from imported material, but also starting using our, producing our raw material by ourselves. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, now my turn that I would like to talk about the API, the active pharmaceutical ingredients, especially in our market, in Indonesian market. I have been in this business, API, for 30 years. Therefore, started in 1970, I remember, and I would like you to think together about the starting of the productions of API in Indonesia. I remember in 1970, 1975, the government of Indonesia invited more than 35 to 40 multinational companies that all of them are very interested in investing, producing the finished product in Indonesia, with one conditions, that after 5 years they run with all of the benefit they got. One of them is a tax holiday. They promise us to invest, to produce at least one API in Indonesia. It happened, ladies and gentlemen. So in the first 5 years, we know that we had more than 30 pharmaceutical raw material or API in Indonesia. Now the questions are, so I would like you together with me to think of at least 2 questions. One is why so far Indonesia is still importing 95% of API to produce the formulations in the country. Second question is whether or not the API contributes the high price or so-called expensive price of Indonesia finished products. The third question is, how about the contributions of the Indonesian government, and in this respect, of course, the Ministry of Health, in how to guidance or how to rule the pharmaceutical industry to make the possibility of producing or to continue producing of API in Indonesia. That 3 questions, I think that we have to think it over. Because first of all, regarding the consistency, if the government still continue with the guidance that all of the multinational companies should still produce the API, at least we can learn on how the pharmaceutical industry, in this case multinational company, producing the formulations, and we, Indonesians, local company, can learn and follow. Secondly, regarding the importations of API in Indonesia, to me, the answer is, it is better late than never. So why don't we start also, as Mr. Kendra just said, that we start thinking, selecting what items is worth to produce and can be worthwhile and can be beneficial and can be economical scale good. That's we have to think. And then of course, we have to calculate back on how many percents of the raw material API contributes in the total of the price of the finished products. So I think, ladies and gentlemen, we invite you to think together on these three questions, and why don't we come to the three answers of these questions. Thank you.